Good evening, and welcome to the December 2nd Bedminster Township Committee meeting. We have 4 of our 5 members here. Mr. Jacobs called. He will be on his way as soon as traffic allows, so we'll see him when he gets here. But in the meanwhile, we have a quorum, so we'll proceed. Can I get the Open Public Meetings Act statement?
Yes, sir. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News in Somerville, the Burnsville News in Burnsville, and to all subscribers. Also posted here at the Township Municipal Building as of January 2nd, 2013.
Can I get everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, on the docket we have approval of meeting minutes. We have the regular meeting from November 18th. Does anybody have any? I sent some changes in today.
They're in front of you.
Does anybody have any other changes or comments? And if not, can I get a motion for the minutes of November 18th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Permits and raffles. We have none tonight. Public comments. Twice every meeting we allow members of the public to come up to the microphone, identify themselves, state where they live, and make a comment on anything that's not already on tonight's agenda. So I invite anybody that wishes to comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to monthly reports by our subcommittee chairs. We'll start with Mr. Payne.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As of course everyone is aware, the entire committee attended the League of Municipalities Convention in Atlantic City, which is always a very worthwhile and productive 3 days. And I just wanted to report on 2 contacts that I made there. One of them was Mary Anna Holden. She is the Commissioner of the Board of Public Utilities, and I attended a seminar that she was putting on. I think, Mayor, you were at that particular seminar. And I was able to take a few minutes of her time after the meeting, and we talked about EDC. I gave her a brief synopsis of the history of EDC in Bedminster Township. I have her business card. She took notes. We've been communicating via email. And essentially I asked her that based on what I told her, was there anything that the township has not done in her mind to effectuate lower rates for both the franchise and bulk users? And without really knowing a lot of the details, other than the fact that we were interveners on 4 separate occasions, she told me that it sounds like you've done everything possible. She will look into it further for us, and I have been communicating with her. So that was a very productive and interesting 10 minutes or so that I spent with Commissioner Holden. Also, I did speak with the Assistant Commissioner of Government and Community Affairs, Mr. Anastasio, with the DOT, and we talked about, and I sent him an email too, on the stop sign that's on the jug handle over off of 202, 206, and now that they've put the green fence there.
The one by the DOT site?
Right by the DOT site, and it kind of blocks the vision of vehicles exiting the DOT, and yet people don't necessarily come to a stop on the jug handle side, kind of roll through that, and there is a possibility for possibly cars and trucks to come very close. He said he would look at it with the idea of maybe putting a stop sign on the DOT side of the property or of the intersection. So once again, very good contacts are made down at the League and very productive.
Ms. Freeman?
We had the Board of Ed meeting on November 21st, and I found out when I went that the board met with Steve Parker to discuss shared services, and I was not invited, although I believe I should have been since I'm liaison to the Board of Ed. I heard about, well, they talked about building charge. The Board of Ed had said that they were going to start charging for use of the building, computer services and tech support like they have with the library, building use, and grass cutting services. I hope to be invited to the next meeting. We also, it was a good meeting. I think that the supervisor, Ron Belandi, continues to impress everybody with his candor and his willingness to share information with the public. It's very refreshing, and he shows great respect to the public by being this way. He said the staff development and training is progressing well. He said that I know parents have been complaining about the Gifted and Talented program, and he did admit that they put a Band-Aid on the Gifted and Talented program, but they're going to be working on it in the future. And he spoke about special ed. He said 3.5 children have been placed outside the district, and the district's paying tuition for that. He said a total of 76 children are classified, meaning that they need some sort of special ed services. So this is a total of 79.5 classified children. I assume the half-child, I'm not really sure what the half-child means. I think it means maybe they have half-time services. Not sure. I should have asked that. Anyway, it's 13% of the population of our school district that's in special ed, and he said that is a little high. He said that hopefully next year we can save some money by providing some in-house programs. These figures exclude the high school. It's just our school. And one member of the public, Emily Casperson, who I'll mention because she was formerly a member of the Board of Ed, she did say that there's a need to improve the Gifted and Talented program to attract more kids who have high intelligence, because that's what their parents look for in the school district. There also was a Municipal Alliance meeting that I didn't go to because I was at the League of Municipalities convention. But I spoke with someone who did attend, and she said that they were really focusing on a report by the county that underage drinking in this county is a constant and growing concern, and they're attempting to address it and come up with some programs. Okay. Yeah, the League of Municipalities was excellent, went to a lot of really good seminars. Mostly I went to ones concerning ethics and open public meetings. It was a really good presentation by Denise Zabo, the clerk of Bernards Township, which is, got 3 times the population we have, and I think 3 times the tech support. Well, we don't have tech support, do we? We have, they have a lot of tech support. Anyway, she did an amazing presentation. John Bellardo also spoke at that presentation, was excellent. Of their agenda, evidently, is posted online Friday before the Tuesday meeting, and then there are hyperlinks on the agenda, and you can get all the background information by linking to the agenda. I mean, stuff that Judy would need 2 or 3 employees to be able to do that, but it was kind of amazing. Let's see. I think that's about it. Yeah. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Santucci.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to follow up with what Committeewoman Freeman spoke about. We did attend an ethics class together, and Ms. Freeman actually had the opportunity to ask Mr. Kearns, who's the General Counsel of the League of Municipalities, the question that she has been posing here as to whether it's proper to pay a nonprofit rate for the reorganization. And he did note that it is proper. I'm saying that with Ms. Freeman here, and that we are a nonprofit governmental entity. So I thought that was really good that you asked that question.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I went back and mentioned to a friend of mine who's very active, I think maybe the head of the Cancer Support Organization in Bedminster, about the special $35 nonprofit dinner rate. So she called up, I wasn't going to bring this up, but since you brought it up, she called up Trump and spoke with Amanda, who's in charge of the events, and she said that the $35 is just for luncheons. They do not have a nonprofit dinner, and they do not have a, as Kern said, if that's their standard fee for nonprofits, she said they don't have a standard fee for nonprofits. They do it on a case-by-case basis, and that for a dinner, for the public or for any nonprofit. A dinner, she said it would have to be a minimum of 125 people eating dinner, and the nonprofit rate for dinner is $75 per person. So seems to me, according to Amanda, that the town is getting a good deal here.
So I wanted to follow up with that. I also wanted to talk about the Historic Preservation Commission. We met on Thursday, November 21st, and they've decided on final language for the plaque for the African Burying Ground, and it's going to be sent to the Somerset County Historical Commission. They're going to hopefully tweak it a little bit more, I believe,
Yes.
and then it'll be sent back to us. Also, this weekend was the beginning of the Colonial Christmas. We had a record attendance this Saturday. It was excellent. Santa was there. We'll also be having holiday shopping Thursday through Sunday, and all the festivities as well. So thanks to all the volunteers that manned Colonial Christmas. It really was an excellent turnout. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, and I was also down at the League of Municipalities, and one of the things that we received, which is very good news, is we got awarded our bronze sustainable jersey certification. We got 200 points, and we're in pretty good company. Other local municipalities that also got bronze level were Bernardsville, Chester Township, and Bridgewater. And we did quite well there, and I want to thank the folks from on the team that put that together and got us that award. Other things, some of the other things that I went to down at the League of Municipalities, Judy and I sat in on a discussion of budgets and budget products, and we're looking for possibly some different type of metrics and reports that we can get as we get ready for budget season. Sat in on an interesting seminar where they talked about the county-wide police consolidation effort down in Camden and what worked well and what did not work well there. Got an interesting discussion from the two Princetons on how their consolidation went, and that was kind of interesting. Also, there was a discussion on the pros and cons of shared services, and one of the things in the shared service discussion, it was there's a small town up in Sussex County, and they only have about 1,400 people, and they were trying to do a consolidation with, I think, Wantage Township, could be wrong, one of those, but up in Sussex County. And in all their discussions on the consolidation, they couldn't make the consolidation work. But this was the mayor of a town of 1,400 people, and out of that discussion, he got so many shared services out of it that their town is down to 3 employees. And they are essentially going out to bid. They've got another town doing DPW, they got another town doing... Anyway, he said he was in the remarkable position where he had 3 or 4 other towns bidding on services for his town, bidding against each other down. I don't think we're in the position of farming out all of our services, but it was interesting to hear that some of that stuff is going on. And also was in on one that talked about the roles of public officials. And that's about all I have from the league. Since you're just walking in, we are just in the monthly reports. Is there anything you wish to add,
Sorry I'm late. I have nothing to add.
Mr. Jacobs? All right. Administrator's report.
Yes. Just a reminder to everybody that the Land Use Board that is set for this Thursday evening, Thursday, December 14th, is it 14th? Or is it the 14th? Will be at the school, just for a change of venue because of the expected attendance. Good news from our CFO. We had, every year we roll over our bond anticipation notes. It's an annual rate that we get for the money that we have to borrow to pay our debt. Last year we had a rate of 0.76% on our borrowed money. This year, the winning note bid was 0.54%. So we were pretty excited about, we got a good response. We got bids from 5 different banks or financial institutions, and so that means our interest rate will be 0.54% for 2014. Just a note to the Township Committee, the employees every year use some of the money that we receive from our GIF Safety Awards, and we usually have a holiday party, so you're all invited to our holiday party this year, Thursday, December 19th, here at 12 o'clock. So please let me know if you can come. It'll be for lunch. And no cost to the taxpayer. That's all out of our GIF awards. And just to confirm our end of the year meeting, we're going to go with Monday, December 30th at 10 a.m. And please let me know if you can't make that meeting.
Okay. Discussion of introduced ordinances. We have none. Introduction of ordinances. We have none. We do have 2 public hearings on ordinances. We'll start with ordinance 2013-015, an ordinance granting municipal consent for the operation of cable television system within the Township of Bedminster, New Jersey, to the Cablevision of Raritan, LLC. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing on 2013-015?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any comments or questions on the ordinance 2013-015? Any member of the public?
I do have a map over here of the service area if anyone needed to refer to it.
Judy, there were some emails that went to Diane, different people, a few of them complaints, and I
Yeah,
know
we
you
had
gave
about,
them.
we had about 14 responses, and they were given to Mr. Villapri at the last meeting
Do you
when we
know
had
if
the
he addressed
public
any
hearing.
of them?
He took them, he said he was going to review them and get back to people. I don't know if he did.
Okay, we should probably find that out before we grant them the 15-year renewal. Would you be able to do that?
There weren't many complaints. They
Yeah,
were
there were about,
mostly,
yeah, I think there were just 2 or 3 of them were complaints. And the rest were comments or questions or praises.
some of them were praises, some of them
Yeah.
were,
Right.
why don't we have more choices, that kind of
Right,
thing.
Yeah, things that couldn't be answered,
That
yeah.
are,
Right, right. I am going to be looking into FiOS. I've gotten quite a lot of questions from people asking, why can't we have FiOS? So I thought maybe it was worth at
I've
least
asked that
calling them
question
up.
myself.
Yeah, at least calling up FiOS and saying, why can't we have FiOS? Why not? You know, at least to have a choice. So I am going to follow up with that. But yeah, if you could just call him or find out, or if you want me to call him and find out if he's addressed. I didn't bring the copy with me, but I
yeah,
did
I didn't,
mark
I don't
off
have a copies
the
of
2 or
all
3
of them. There were
people
about,
who had
there were about
questions.
14 on the list, and he took them with him at the last meeting.
I did call 2 of the people up and tell them what he told me about why we don't have FiOS, but that was coming from him, a competitor, so I don't know. I told them I'd follow up
But
and ask
the,
about FiOS.
It's not an either-or
No,
scenario. I mean, on my street, we have
Both.
both Cablevision and FiOS, so it's really an economic and business decision by FiOS if they want to go and put the fiber in, if they feel they're going to get a return based on the number of subscriptions. I mean, they've done it on my street. I would assume that at some point they will do
Part of
it
the
somewhere else.
problem, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe John can even add to it, is the underground, FiOS would be an underground installation, and there is no conduit up in the hills that it would go into. It's just dig it up and put it in the ground in the dirt, and
Right.
that's really not a good, they're digging up everything when they're doing it, so
Right.
it's
I
not
think
an
on,
easy
I think on
problem.
Autumn Ridge and Gatehouse, there is a leftover conduit from, I can't remember the name of the company, but this was years ago. They had somebody else put fiber optic in, and then they kind of went out of business, or they never really got a subscriber base. So they might be using that same conduit. I'm not sure.
But that's only up in certain sections, it's not throughout the hills.
I know
But
about
the
Town-
FiOS issue is separate from the ordinance that we're
Right.
presently
Yeah.
considering.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any other comments on 2013-015? Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Can I get a motion on ordinance 2013-015?
So moved. To approve.
To approve.
I'll second that.
This would be a roll call vote. Ms. Freeman?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Payne?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Ordinance 2013,
Oh, I just want to say, and thank you, John, for the negotiations with Cablevision.
Glad to assist.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good work.
Ordinance 2013-016, an ordinance authorizing and accepting the minor subdivision and creation of the property identified as Block 28, Lot 1.01 in the Township of Bedminster, along with authorizing the deed memorialization of the same. This ordinance subdivides a 66 by 66-foot portion of Block 28, Lot 1, also known as the Negro Slave Burying Ground, 130 Hillside Avenue, making a new lot and preserving an historic area. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing for this?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Does any member of the public wish to comment on this ordinance? Please come before the microphone, state your name and your address, and give us your comment.
Yes, Mary Jane Fennell, 162 Hillside Avenue. I've told the Historic Commission this, but there's a marker on that burying ground that seems to be about 15 feet short. There's a white marker up there that nobody knows who put it in or why it's there, but it is 15 feet short of the 66. So could we either move it? Let's not shortchange these people after over 200 years. Give them the 66 feet from the road and not 50 feet. The marker should be moved.
Well, I don't think, I was at that meeting you spoke of, and that, we heard it brought up, and I think right now it is still a mystery as to what the marker is all about. And I think probably the Historic Preservation Commission will, hopefully we'll get to the bottom of what the marker is, and once we figure out what the marker is, if that needs to be moved, I would guess that that would be a separate issue.
Well,
I
the thing
can
is
tell
that
you,
that's-
Mayor, that I have a deed here tonight, and the township engineer has attached a meets and bounds description and a map indicating it's the full 66 by 66 plot. So whether the marker has to be moved or not, we could consult with the township engineer, but there's no shortchanging of the area.
John, if I saw, in looking at that marker, it looks like it's a survey marker with it's the monument with the cross. It looks like a survey marker. Who had done it, who had done the survey, when it was put there, that would take some investigation, but it looked, but it's obviously not the one that we're gonna be going by. So,
And there's no move afoot at the present time to divest a property adjacent that the town still owns also, so.
right, I mean, right now it's just a piece of cement in the ground. It really doesn't have any significance because we have another survey by Mr. Ferraro that depicts the true 66 by 66 dimensions.
So then they're going to cut the grass on the 66 and not the 50 feet? Because, John Mance's men keep the property nice, but they stop short of that marker.
I'm not sure exactly how how it'll be groomed by DPW, but like I said, we'll hopefully get to the bottom of that marker. And
Okay, thank you.
but thank you. Anybody else have a comment or question? Anybody up on the dais?
No, Mayor.
Can I get a motion to close the public hearing for ordinance 2013-016?
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to pass 2013-016?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Ms. Freeman?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Payne?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Okay, we have two resolutions on the consent agenda tonight. Resolution 2013-131, authorizing the refund of tax overpayments. Does anybody have a question or comment on those? If not, can I get a resolution? Or, I'm sorry, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Again, roll call vote. Ms. Freeman?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Payne?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
Resolution 2013-132 is authorizing the return of funds collected for redemption of a tax sale certificate. Again, anybody have a question or comment on that one? If not, can I get a motion for 2013-132?
So moved?
Second?
Again, this is a roll call vote concerning funding. Ms. Freeman?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Payne?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
Approval of the bill list. Can I get a motion to approve the bill list pending the approval of individual invoices?
Judy, I left 3 bills out that required additional signatures, but I forgot to mention that to you.
Okay, very good.
They're in the folder and they're standing up.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Nope, go ahead. Anybody else have a comment or question? If not, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Again, roll call vote. Ms. Freeman?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Payne?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
Discussion items. Well, we have some new business and old business, and as we wind down to the end of the calendar year, we don't have anything on the new business pile just as yet, but 2 very important issues on old business, and one that I know is probably what most of the people in the audience are looking to hear. And I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mr. Holtaway, who will be here to answer questions regarding his presentation at the last meeting on the Blue Ribbon Commission report.
Having a little appreciation of history on the FiOS, the penetration into the hills was limited to certain neighborhoods because other neighborhoods requested big bucks from FiOS, and they were unwilling to pay the kind of money that they were looking for. So that's why some neighborhoods have some and some others. Penetrations in the other parts of town were limited because the Public Utilities Commission got on FiOS because they were putting it in more suburban areas, and they wanted them to focus on the more urban areas, and that's where their dollars are going now. So FiOS expansion has slowed. I sit there grading when I know the answer and I can't say it. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Mr. Mayor, Township Committee. I was here last meeting. We went through a report. I was kind of met with stunned silence, which I understand. It's a lot of significant findings and a lot of findings that nobody anticipated us having. We have gone through and corrected one item in the report. We have not updated the report. My intent is to, if there's comments and questions that impact the report after tonight, we will then do the research, find out what those answers are, and we will do one update of the report and then repost it on the township website when it's done. The error that we had was with the rolling stock payments between the 3 towns. I was given a number from Bedminster's budget, and I was given a number from Far Hills' budget and a Tewksbury number. It turns out that what actually happens with that is the entire payment is made by Bedminster, and then the contributions from the other 2 municipalities are miscellaneous income into Bedminster to offset their portion. So the number here before was $170,000. So what happened was this number was $23,000 too high. This number was 60. So this was like 171, and this was, add them together, 44,000. Thank you. And let's see if I can get this thing to go. Now what it did, let's see if I can find what it did was it came over here to cost sharing, and it impacted this number and this number and brought them down, and it impacted, then where did my other one go? Those are the hot calls, cold calls, fire calls, training hours. It impacted this schedule, and this went from like $2,200 down to $1,900, and this $1,000, $1,000 something dollars went down to $900 and some dollars. So while the number did change things, it did not vary any conclusion made in the report. I received questions from the mayor. Thank you very much. I could prepare. Now, the question was on the maps of the service area. And many copies for
Thank you.
essentially, the question was, can we get maps of the coverage areas for 63 and 29 fire and 29 rescue? 29 rescue is easy. It's the entirety of Far Hills and Bedminster, so it is the entire map. 29 fire, Far Hills, Bedminster, handles the area shaded. This is actually their service area map, is the shaded area. So this line is basically Long Lane and going up Larger Cross Road into the Pottersville area, and this is 206 coming across. Basically, it's the very northwest corner of the municipality. I have scribbles on there. A P is a pool, PD is a pond, and a V is a vacant lot. And I was looking for water sources for drafting to see what the extent of those resources were. On page
I was wondering also of us as a supplement, and I know this is just Bedminster Township, which is really all we're truly looking at, but I'm wondering if I could get some of the folks from 63, if you could afterwards give us your whole coverage area. I mean, it's one thing to just look at the Bedminster portion, but realize that you cross into Tewksbury and Hunterdon County a little bit. That might also give us a little better, bigger picture on what you guys do. So that would, not tonight, but offline afterwards.
Yeah, if I could be copied on that, I sure would appreciate it. Steve's next question was on page 22, paragraph 4. There was a discussion regarding call reports and audited statements, and that they were requested by the TC, but that request was discontinued. Can that be elaborated on? Prior to my administration, a demand was made for full audited financials from the fire companies. And fairly early in our tenure, we sat down and we said, well, this is costing these guys like $7,000 per company to do these audited statements. They're private, they're independent, they have their own internal statements, and the Township Committee agreed at that time to accept their internal statements rather than requiring them to hire an auditor. And the only reason why they needed to hire an auditor was to meet that requirement from the Township Committee. So I forget what year we changed that, probably 2004, 2005, I think, 2006, somewhere back in that. Item number 3, question number 3. What is the mission and equipment requirements of a command vehicle for the fire departments? I've never been a fireman, never been a chief, haven't had a vehicle. My observations have been that they carry the maps, they carry certain information that they need, the resources, mostly documentation, procedures, fire hydrant locations, that kind of nature. They are equipped with radios. Back in the old days, they had the most radios of anything, and the chief likes to get to the fire first, or as quick as possible. I have to let them, during their period, expand on other uses that they may have, but that's
And
knowledge
just
I have.
FYI, the questions that I posed and sent to Judy, not only was for the commission, but, for further discussion amongst the forces. So I don't expect that you're gonna be the full and final answer on it, but, just trying to fill in some questions.
And again, in the report, we go into why we think the technology is making them less of a need. Number 4, who negotiates and how was the funding ratios shared between municipalities, Bedminster, Tewksbury, and Far Hills, and Bedminster? And how is this arrived at historically? Is this up to the departments or the municipalities? It's actually up to the municipalities as a function of the budgeting issue. Years ago, Carl Torcelleri was the mayor of Far Hills, and During the budget process, he'd call me up and say, how much you giving them? And I'd tell him what we had in the budget, and he goes, okay, and he would give 25% of that amount. He tried to match our 80-20 capital, because the agreement we have with Far Hills is only on capital. It does not cover operating expense. So Carl and I would coordinate every year, and their budget would contain 25% of our number, which is then 20% of the entire number. And historically, that's how we did it all those years, while I was mayor and while Carl was mayor. So far as Tewksbury, there was an amount that they contributed years ago. I met with them in 2004, 2006, 2007, talking about the ratios and the numbers, and you know, they have a serious problem because they're supporting 5 fire companies, and a number of them are not in their town, as Pottersville is not, and their resources are stretched, and we made efforts to try to get some more money. Didn't work out quite as well as we had hoped, and our report shows that you know, the shortfall is now significant and needs to be addressed. Can the municipality make EMT training volunteering in the local fire departments a requirement for employment legally? I am not a labor attorney. I expect you cannot force it. I think it's one of these things that has to be encouraged, and I reviewed my words in here, and that was an earlier answer. Lance and I had decided that we should make it a criteria for employment, that if it's a plus. So if you have two hires who are otherwise equal, and one of them is a volunteer fireman, that he should be given preferential treatment on hiring, and hoping that they will ride with the fire department and participate with the Department of Public Works in that public service. You do not see a specific recommendation for the establishment of common equipment or shared training programs. Did that come under recommendation 12, added interaction, or recommendation 2, consolidation? The answer is yes. Obviously, when you have a single command and control procedure, you're going to have a single purchasing line, you're going to have a single specifying lane, you're going to have a single one training officer for everything. So yes, it comes in under the high level of cooperation and or consolidation. And thank you for thanking me for the report. So those are the questions that I received prior to the meeting. These are the corrections that I had prior to the meeting. So I guess, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to open up to the public.
Yes, at this time, if you've got a question for Mr. Holtway, specifically regarding anything on the Blue Ribbon Commission report, please come to the microphone, make yourself heard. This is the time also. After that, I'd like to open it up for Township Committee questions. Sure. Please, this is your chance.
Mayor Lloyd, good evening.
Mayor Holtway, how are you?
I am well, sir, and yourself.
Question for you.
Yes.
Could you
Referring
state
to
your name,
page
please?
14
Excuse me,
of
could you
your-
state your name?
Robert Lloyd, Bedminster Township, Pottersville.
Thanks.
One, I commend you and Mr. Boxer on the report that you put together. It's very comprehensive.
Thank you.
Very informative, and I thank you. Page 14. It's an obvious conclusion that if 29 Fire was to cover Bedminster portion of 63 services, there would be a substantial cost savings to Bedminster taxpayers. What is that number? Page 14,
Page 14, right?
third paragraph.
If you read in the conclusions and you read in the other sections, that if the number of false alarms for 29 and for 63 were reduced by 25%, right now there's 258, last year, we're talking 2012,
Yeah.
2012, there were 258 false alarms in Bedminster between the two companies. If we were to reduce that by 25%, that would be what, 60? Just saving those false alarms would cover the Bedminster calls that Pottersville makes. The hot calls, when there's really a fire.
Right.
So if that problem could be solved, 29 Fire would have no additional calls. Astounding.
But that
But it's only a
equates it-
25% reduction. I mean, you get a 50% reduction, their total calls would go down even more.
Okay, but dollar factor, that it comes to what?
Well, it'd be a break even for 29 because they're rolling the same amount. So they could replace 63 at a very small incremental cost, and then, what is it? It's a little more diesel fuel to get up there.
And distance, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, if, hypothetically, let's say that takes place, which I sincerely hope it does not. If indeed 63 were taken out of the picture for the Pottersville area and Tewksbury, the intent of this is to save money for the taxpayer. Have you taken into account the additional costs that people will be paying for fire protection insurance? I myself, we save $187 because our home, 63 functions there in Pottersville. So if we're looking to save taxpayers of the township money, I think that number ought to be part and parcel.
Yes, and if I can get to the screen here fast enough. We get to our comparison here. No, too far back. It turns out that when you take a look at the data, the taxpayers of Bedminster are paying $1,100 per tax unit in the 63 area, right? Here's Bedminster contribution cost. If we take a look at 63 Fire, the cost per tax unit is $873 paid for by the taxpayers of Bedminster. If we take a look at 29 Fire, right, their average cost per tax unit is $95. So your $173 savings is costing the rest of the taxpayers $600.
How much?
$600.
Throughout the whole township.
Yeah, right. If you take the tax units in 29 Fires area and divide that into the cost of operating 29, it's $95 a tax unit per household.
$95 per household. Okay, I thought you were saying that each household was being
No.
heavy. Okay.
Right.
I-
However,
Thank you.
the cost for 63 in that coverage area is $873 per household. So what's happening is these folks are subsidizing these folks.
But that goes on throughout the whole township in many aspects.
Yes. I
And
don't know if it
that's
happens-
a
I don't
given
know
of
if it
government.
happens to a factor of almost 10 to 1, but
Well, it's a fact in government, that's what occurs.
right,
Always has and always will.
and always
No.
will. But that's,
Quid pro
it's,
quo here.
it's not my decision. I just dug up the numbers, and that's a fact of life that there is that kind of a ratio, there's that kind
Yeah.
of an issue.
Somebody might even call it socialism, but it is here. The other question I
Prefer not
have,
to. I mean, they're all volunteers. I don't think they're gonna
Pardon?
take us they're all volunteers. I don't think they're going to try to take us over.
I hope we don't try and take them over.
Well, that's for the future to see.
The amount of money that this township spent to build a firehouse for Far Hills, Bedminster, are we responsible for those dollars, some $900,000?
We are,
As township taxpayers?
yes, they signed an agreement to pay for that.
Okay. Then, what has occurred with the old firehouse sale that was to help offset some of the expense of the 900-some odd thousand? Where is that? What is the status of that?
To tell you the truth, since I've left office, I don't know exactly. I know when I left office, they had a buyer who was negotiating. There were variance requirements required from Far Hills in order to change the use of the building to make it, and they had to pass a parking ordinance in Far Hills to allow the parking on the street, the reserved parking on the street, so that the sale could go through. And I don't know how that has gone in the past.
Would you happen to know what the estimated value of that property is in today's market?
I believe well, I don't know that, but I think the offer, is Ron Kennedy here? Seems to me it was 1,900,000, 1.1 million
Okay.
in that range.
So,
The theory is that will go down to pay down the debt.
no, theory or agreement?
The agreement is that will be used for
Okay,
debt.
it's not a theory, it's an agreement.
It's an agreement that will be used for debt.
Contractual agreement?
Beg pardon?
It's a contractual agreement?
I would have to check to see where that ended up.
But I mean,
they
this
also
is,
have
this is an ongoing diatribe of how many years?
the
Sale of this piece of property.
Well, the big problem, of course, was that this agreement was made before the market collapse in 2008.
Yeah, right,
And
okay, I understand that.
That really kind of muddied up a lot of waters for the municipality and fire department and everybody.
Okay. And I thank you for your time and your explanation. One other issue that I came across, the numbers presented by Far Hills Bedminster Company, 500 and some odd hours per year per
Yep.
individual. That comes out, let's base on a 40-hour work week. That's 13.7 weeks, 40 hours per week. This, sir, I think is a bogus number.
Well, as I said, I don't know if you were here for my presentation.
I was not.
2 weeks ago.
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
And my
I'm
comment
sorry.
is that we noticed that tremendous variance. And we don't know if sweeping the floor or,
How to
whatever.
work
what
the end of a broom?
constitutes training hours,
Yeah, okay.
we did not get into. But that is a large variance that should be, I mean, there's a lot of investigation that should continue
Okay.
after this report as a follow-up. And that's just one of them.
Last but not least, and again, I appreciate your time. Page 6, last paragraph. '29 Fire and Far Hills Bedminster Fire Company, formerly known as Union Hook and Ladder, excuse me, is an independent company founded early in the last century for this current service area, including Bedminster, with the exception of Pottersville and Far Hills.
Oh, yeah.
I'm confused with that.
It's an engineer speaking with poor punctuation. With the current service area, including Bedminster, it should have a comma, with the exception of Pottersville
With the exception, okay, fine.
and Far Hills, yeah.
Thank you for your time.
You're more than welcome, Mr. Mayor Lloyd, thank you. Next. Next. Mr. Mayor,
Comments,
questions?
questions? Go ahead, please.
I was wondering if we would have the opportunity to kind of respond formally. We've got
Sure.
like 5 or 6 different slides that we could put up that just kind of shows our position and intention.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do that?
Yeah?
All right.
Yep.
This
Don't
is-
be shy. Now's your chance to speak up.
But while we're trying to get that loaded, does anybody else have any comments while you're loading that, or questions?
Judy will help you with that.
Yes, I can talk about her booting that up. I didn't know when we were gonna, we'd rather for us.
Let me shut this one
I
down.
think most of you know me, and I only have about 30 seconds, so I'm not done
But
long.
state your name for the
Sorry.
microphone and the recording.
My name is Adam Siegel, resident of Bedminster, ex-chief of Far Hills Bedminster Fire Department, current captain. First, we just wanted to thank Lance and Bob for all the time you put in the report. Clearly, improvements are something we all go for all the time, and we appreciate it. Also wanted to thank the Township Committee for their interest in emergency services, not only in having the report done, but now in taking the time to analyze the findings. Over the past few years, a lot of you have come to our training sessions, something that we hope will continue in the future to learn what we do and what we're about. The reason that we're attending tonight and some of our members are attending tonight is really just to show support of our organization and a willingness to be involved in the process now as we analyze these findings. We've seen a lot of change in Bedminster over the last 15, 20, 25 years. The highways came through town, the Hills was built. We've really transformed from a rural town into what we are today, and our needs changed. I think now we're in we're past the growth phase and we're in a maintenance phase, and you'll see a lot of our intentions follow that maintenance phase. I have a handout tonight which I'll give to Judy, which covers just a couple of issues in the report that we wanted to further delve into as you guys are analyzing them. And our hope is now that you'll establish some kind of subcommittee that we can sit down with and go through the recommendations and figure out which ones are best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
63, you're on.
Are there any further questions from you?
Question, but I can wait.
Or do you want to wait?
Why don't we wait until
63?
63 makes their comments, and then we can take questions from the dais.
I'm Robert Holmes, Vice President, Pottersville Fire. I live in Tewksbury Township, 9 Dryden Road. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Parker, Township Committee, for having us tonight, inviting us to respond to the report. I spent a lot of time personally invested, worked with Mayor Haltaway and Mr. Boxer in terms of putting this together. Very, very valuable exercise. A lot of great things and a lot of great ideas came out of this. I hope that this is just the start of a larger dialogue to come. Now, in terms of, certainly we don't agree with everything in the report. We agree with a lot in the report. But definitely those are some of the things we wanted to highlight tonight. Again, there was a lot of time invested into this and a lot of ideas. And I think, from even putting this response together, we sat in a room for 4 hours, 5 hours on a Sunday afternoon in our firehouse and probably came up with 20 or 30 different ideas. We come from, certainly many different backgrounds. We come from many different communities. And if you look at Pottersville Volunteer Fire Company, who are we? Members, we live in Bedminster, we live in Far Hills, we live in Tewksbury. If you actually do the numbers, it's about 50% on each side of the river. It's a really unique community in terms of, certainly geographically, being parts almost of 3 different counties, but certainly it is a real sense of community. And you look at diversity, certainly, of the backgrounds of our members, that has changed. That whole demographic has changed. And we are a company certainly in transition. If you look at why we're in transition, it's because of our membership. It's not because of the physical firehouse. It's not. That has really very little to do with it. It's the members and the members of the community. My wife and I moved into Pottersville in 2004 from Greenwich Village, Manhattan, and it was a night and day difference. But certainly knocked at the door as soon as we moved in, people just leaving things on our front porch, introducing themselves, just making everyone feel comfortable. And that's one of the reasons certainly I became a volunteer. Not that I had a burning interest to be a firefighter, but was actually to give back to a community that's given so much to me and my family. So when you look at how things have changed, we've actually had explosive growth. So many different organizations are really struggling in terms of membership. But 2009, there's really been a change in terms of certainly our recruitment, the folks that we're able to bring in, and all their different skill sets, and what they're able to bring to bear to the community, and certainly certainly to the fire service. We've had 16 new firefighters since 2009, bringing our membership up to 37 active members. And we've really done a great job in the last few years, really putting a lot of emphasis on training, leadership development, and accountability. And those are some of the things that certainly we do in our firehouse that really translates back into the community. We've actually had increases in business membership that is also helping to assist in offsetting expenses. We've had 2 attorneys join us recently who are helping to do that. So certainly, our intent. So again, this is probably one of the things we maybe disagree a little bit in terms of the report, but really our intent and our endeavor is really to be an independent entity to committed to serving both the residents of Bedminster and Tewksbury Townships. You know, we've got availability, you've got the support, you've got the resources. They're there, so let's use them. In terms of appropriate response times to calls, yes, we have nothing against 29 Fire, but that's a long drive from their firehouse all the way up into the hills of Pottersville. I mean, that's a long drive. What we do seek, definitely some opportunities, certainly from a collaboration and partnership with 29 Fire and Rescue. We definitely seek to expand that. We talked about that extensively throughout the Blue Ribbon Commission. One of the things that's working really well now is utilizing their tanker services and bringing it into our area for fire calls. That's working. That's something that we did immediately, and it's working well. Again, I think what we have to do a better job on, and I think we own a lot of this, is work more proactively with the townships that we work with. So Bedminster Township, Tewksbury, and I remember we first sat down to like, we don't really know you guys that well. And I think we own that, and I think that that's something that we're gonna strive to make a better, a more concerted effort certainly going forward. But, that's not just Bedminster, but I think on Tewksbury Township side too, because we are servicing the residents and the taxpayers of the community, and I think that we know it. But I think the greatest thing that's gonna come out of that are ideas, cost is becoming an issue. We can come up with ideas to address those. And I think the talk of emerging, you'll see in a couple slides, is a little bit premature at this point, because there's a lot of things that we could do internally to kind of deal with this. And again, obviously you heard throughout the report last time, is that we could work and assist, obviously reducing some of that inequity with Tewksbury Township as well by working with them. Some considerations in the report, these volunteer organizations are really not the root cause of the financial problem that exists in the state of New Jersey and other states across the country. However, there are opportunities where we can actually reach some financial efficiencies. But really, I think the spirit of volunteerism, especially in this area, is really, really strong and does offset. I mean, if you just had one paid firefighter and look at the money, the total expenditures and the original course is about $150,000 per year. I mean, that's one paid firefighter. Again, this is kind of the other consideration, really overstating that opportunity for statistically significant savings from a merger of Pottersville Volunteer Fire Company. I think that's what's important. We're really looking at, if the original was $150,000 per year, whatever it may be. There's a lot of value in that. I mean, the members of both communities are getting service 24/7, 365 days a year. And maybe in the past, certainly from our standpoint, where we had problems in the past with covering daytime calls, I think that's really been erased. I mean, last week we were able to actually support 2 fire operations in 2 different towns with 2 different crews going to it. So I think that's changed. I think another consideration is just ensure the accuracy of the data. I applaud Mayor Haltway for coming up tonight and correcting one of the points that we were actually going to bring up later in the presentation in terms of the money spent from the rolling stock account. But there's other things in there too that we would address, LoSAP being one of them. But I think one thing that would be valuable is instead of taking one point of 1 year, maybe actually doing do a previous 3 years and then let's project out 3 years and see what those numbers look like. Because there are going to be significant items that are going to hit budgets that probably should be taken into the report. And I think going back to the original point is that whole communication is key. And I think that this is just a start. I hope it's just a start. Again, I think we talked a little bit things we wanted just to kind of call out and correct really in the report. But the history of the Pottersville Volunteer Fire Company. There was a West End Pottersville hose company in 1929, lasted until 1934. From 1934 to 1954, that area was covered primarily by Oldwick and Peapack Gladstone. After our establishment in 1954, when you actually look at it, that was really in light of the need of some well-resourced residents that really found a need to have additional fire services in the area. Financial data questions, again, I can point these out but in the next 2 slides, but yeah, there are a couple things in terms of LoSAP funding from 2012. We think that $15,000 kind of needs to be clarified. It's a little bit, it's a misrepresentation just because in 2012 we actually received we were actually overpaid for LoSAP in that year. That payment, I think, is usually given at the end of the year. And we notified the township at the beginning of 2013 that that number is probably about half. So that $15,000 is probably about $7,500. We notified them that, and I think the correction was made. In terms of the insurance, we looked into that. We thought that number was a little high, $30,000. And we looked into it, and it's probably, just from the initial light investigation, probably more in the $20,000 area. So that could have another significant impact, certainly on the dollars allocated for Pottersville Volunteer Fire Company. And then Bob addressed the rolling stock payment. And the other thing too in the report, which I think is unfortunate, but I think there was some time, certainly in the past, where there may have been strained relationships between 29 Fire and 63 Fire. But again, I mean, that does exist in any organization. I think we're well beyond that. We work on a number of different committees. The Blue Ribbon Committee is one. Bedminster Charities is another. We work together. We go on calls together. Could that be improved? Yeah. When we talk about collaboration and training and doing those kind of mutual responses, that certainly could help with that. And again, I spoke a little bit about this before, but in terms of that ability to respond to calls, that we did struggle with that early on, maybe early 2000s, but that's totally changed in the last few years when you've seen a significant increase in numbers. So look at this from a different perspective. So we saw it is this is very analogous to, unfortunately, healthcare. Is when you're actually looking at when CMS, the Center of Medicare and Medicaid Services in the United States, looks at the cost of treating a patient in a rural hospital versus an urban hospital. It's very expensive to treat a patient in a rural hospital. Those critical access rural hospitals have to be subsidized a little bit more to support their existence. So we're not going to argue with that. But what we would say is, if you look at the total dollar contribution, and this is based on the numbers that have been uncorrected in the report, mind you, and I've got asterisks against the ones we have questions about that need to be changed. Again, $148,000. And when you look at, certainly one of the underlying factors in the report, and look at the number one recommendation, was that inequity, and that inequity does exist. If you kind of look at this between Bedminster Township versus Tewksbury Township, that's 75% to 25%. When you look at the total number of calls, that obviously in Bedminster Township is 59%, so about 60% of the calls are into Bedminster, and 41% of the calls are into Tewksbury. However, Bedminster is supporting it by a ratio of 75% to 25%. So again, there is some disparities there, and there's things that can be addressed. And some key considerations there in terms of what we should do to kind of address some of these things is, obviously, let's first ensure that the numbers are accurate, to kind of see exactly what the extent of this concern is. Pottersville Volunteer Fire Company calls into Tewksbury can be primary or secondary. And I think that is, versus, let's say, 29 Fire into Far Hills is probably always primary. We can actually be called into Tewksbury Township on secondary mutual aid calls. It's just the way that it's done. That's just the way it's done there, and the way that it's effective. There's numerous ways here to address this issue, to 75% to 25%. Numerous ways, and we've outlined many of them. We've got many ideas, but do we need to jump into a merger? Or can we maybe leave it up to the volunteer organizations to address some of these things individually? When you look at outstanding debt between the two townships, it's more equitable. You look at Bedminster Township and Tewksbury Township. Bedminster is about 56%. We got $176,000, and that is all to pay debt service on 63-101, which is our primary response vehicle. And another thing that I think that we do a good job on, and it was reported out in the report, is we do raise a lot of money through fundraising. We do have assets that we can bring to bear in terms of rental income from property from the schoolhouse that we own. And again, there's a good, from this standpoint, from this $15,000 number, I mean, that's substantially under what the market value is, and that's something we could quickly address. But obviously, there's contracts that are involved with people. But those are things that we could look to address as well. So. Going the wrong way. That's definitely the wrong way. All right, so you asked us to come up with some solutions. So obviously, assistance support Bedminster Township resolving equity issues in Tewksbury Township, obviously engage residents and Township Committee, Mayor of Tewksbury Township. Certainly, you can do that, and certainly we can support that as well. Again, let's revise the financial data to make sure it's correct, and explore the opportunity and support the idea of exploring this opportunity of formalized agreement between the two municipalities. I mean, it seems to work well with Bar Hills and Bedminster. Formalized agreements could certainly help. Establish a collaborative cross-functional work stream to identify opportunities to create internal financial efficiencies within Pottersville volunteer fire operations. Now, I think this could probably go to all volunteer organizations, but certainly we'll take an onus upon ourselves to do that when we've already made a lot of steps to do that. Plan and prioritize smart equipment purchases with both Bedminster and Tewksbury Townships. One of the things that what we could do from a communication standpoint is have these kind of planning and prioritization meetings with all the volunteer organizations and certainly members of the committee, so we don't all show up at the same time. Oh, we need a truck, we need this, we need that. And I think that's a little bit unfair to the township, and I think just through a little planning and a little communication, we could resolve some of those issues. We've looked at some of this for our own purposes, this whole idea of a vehicle refurbished versus buying a new vehicle. We've got a 1990 Pierce pumper in our basement. To replace that vehicle is probably going to be upwards of $600,000. But to refurbish that vehicle, which a lot of fire companies did in the past, $250,000. When you get complete new electronics, seats, tanks, everything else. So definitely something that we would look to do, and it's a good idea. Fire companies have done this for years. We talked about this purchase of a command vehicle. Our members do believe we've got a 1999 Ford Explorer that's rusting out. Looks like a Fred Flintstone truck. I mean, it's rusted. It's got 140,000 miles on it. We definitely see a need for a command vehicle, but we'd be willing to fund that through. And we do a lot of fundraising, have a lot of income. We could fund that on our own, and that $35,000 that was allocated in the budget could be put towards our 2014 operating budget. Again, just an idea. Again, I said this before, but leveraging our existing assets like property more effectively to offset other expenses. So, there it is. All right. So, again, the Blue Ribbon Report did bring a lot of legitimate concerns, and hopefully it starts this whole engagement of constructive dialogue between the volunteer organizations. Hopefully, we can work more collaboratively. And hopefully, we will realize some real savings, certainly throughout the township. Again, it needs to be edited to make sure that we reach these accurate financial conclusions. In Bedminster Township, you've got the resources. We've got a great organization right in Pottersville. Use us, and that's all we can really be said about that. I mean, it's a fantastic organization. It really is that fabric of that community, and it's a community like no other. Again, this whole open line of communication, let's start that now, from a collaboration standpoint, a planning standpoint, a prioritization. And again, one of the things that we are a little bit concerned at is, we definitely have considerable assets. We've got the schoolhouse, the firehouse, but one thing that we would disagree with is really taking those assets and liquidating to pay down somebody else's debt. And that's something that, from our standpoint, we want to be involved, and this to us is just, it's unfortunate, but again, like we've said, we've gone through a number of changes already. There's a number of things that we can do before we even get to that point. And again, there's some more just ideas that we put down on the bottom here in terms of opportunities to reduce some of these operating expenses, in terms of, again, just a reduction of overall operating expenses, smart equipment purchases, leveraging our fundraising ability to offset some of these expenses, self-funding when appropriate. Again, that whole idea with the command vehicle we're doing on our own, but self-funding certain non-fire operation expenses, insurance on our schoolhouse, insurance on a brush truck that's an antique truck. Why wouldn't we take that over? And we certainly could. And reduce the size of our rainy day fund to self-fund some debt and equipment purchases. So that's what we have. And again, thank you for this opportunity for letting us present our response. And again, thank you, Mayor Holtaway, for including us into this report. It was definitely comprehensive. We learned a lot, and anything that we can do, certainly going forward, if this is the start of the bigger and better things, we'll I absolutely will. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
We had a focus group early on in our developing this report, and we invited 2 officers from each of the companies, both fire companies from the rescue squad. And Lance's opening statement was, you know, we're going to write the numbers down and we're going to see what's going on, but the solutions need to come from you guys. And I'm glad to see that they've taken that to heart, and that's very, very positive for us.
May I make this a trifecta?
Sure.
I don't have a fancy slideshow tonight, but I'm Patty Siegel, resident of Bedminster, member of the Far Hills Bedminster First Aid Squad for 16 plus years. I'm not really counting at this point. Past captain, past lieutenant, past vice president, past fundraising chair, blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. Let me thanking the Blue Ribbon Committee for all their work in combing through all the call statistics and financials necessary to produce a 28-page report presented at the last council meeting. We all understand that budgets are tight, and it is prudent to explore cost-saving areas where they may exist. The First Aid Squad is happy to participate in this process, and in the coming weeks we'll do our best to answer any questions and to provide additional information that the council may request. Since receiving the report, we've been working diligently to study it, comparing it to the data we have, discovering a number of discrepancies, as well as investigating the information provided. The Far Hills Bedminster First Aid Squad has obvious concerns when the report has a specific recommendation as dissolution of our organization. The squad has formed a committee to investigate further and develop a cohesive response, which will be presented to the town council as soon as possible. There's a plethora of information in the report, much of which has generated many questions, as well as areas we feel need to be highlighted and clarified prior to the Township Council members making a fully informed decision. The First Aid Squad has, in its 73 years of operation, always done all we can to assist the residents in our coverage area, as well as working very hard on fundraising activities in order to minimize monetary support from the township. Of the 3 emergency services in Bedminster, the report does correctly point out that the First Aid Squad has multiple fundraising activities and has never requested additional funds from the town for capital expenditures, which has been a source of pride for our members throughout the years. There was one reference to a statement made by our president in an SFAC meeting regarding the possible need for assistance in purchasing our next ambulance. The comment being referred to was in no way an official notice to the towns of a future need for capital assistance. It was a statement made primarily in jest after just having paid off one of our most recent ambulance purchases 2 years ago. We foresee no need to make any such requests for assistance from the township. The First Aid Squad has worked diligently and successfully throughout the years to remain as fiscally independent as possible, and was noted that we own our own building, property, vehicles, and equipment. And let me just restate that. We own our own building, our property, our vehicles, and equipment. Our volunteers are proud to serve the community in a fiscally responsible way without carrying debt. Additionally, we have serious concerns and doubts with the squad being viewed as a financing opportunity. We are working with other squads in Somerset County on a number of fronts, from looking at the proposed soft billing to how that changes the way in which squads interact with their towns, the call volumes needed to break even, and the pitfalls that may be involved. We will present what we believe is a clearer picture of the economics and logistics of billing the patients. We look forward to presenting the Town Council with a well-researched and detailed response coming from the professionals in emergency medical services in order to fully inform the council members how the squad functions, which far exceeds what was stated in the Blue Ribbon Committee, and clarifying discrepancies in the data presented in the report. We look forward to presenting why we feel it is in the best interest of the citizens to allow us to remain an independent organization. We believe some of the information and statistics in the report require adjusting, and merging 29 rescue into 29 fire doesn't need to be the only solution. We have an amazing group of highly trained and committed volunteers who deserve a tremendous amount of gratitude. We are happy to detail precisely what the squad does to the town and give an accurate picture of what volunteering for your first aid squad looks like, as well as clarifying any information presented. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to listen to any of the concerns the committee has and take them back to the first aid squad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Please, this is the opportunity. Comments, questions, please be heard. Seeing none, I will move it along to the dais. So I will open it up to any member of the dais here that wishes to have a question or a comment.
Well, you know, my first comment is it's remarkable. It's remarkable how fortunate Bedminster is. The three organizations, you presented your positions eloquently and with passion, and as much passion as they serve the town. So that's my first comment, and just we go from there. That hearing all of you speak reminds me once again how fortunate we are to have you, and we appreciate, and as the township, we thank you for your services. Thank you.
I'll echo what Larry said. A lot of towns would love to have the dilemma or the problems that we have in trying to wring out efficiency of three very highly trained, well-equipped, highly motivated organizations. So it's a good thing that we have to address, and the fact that how do we get the efficiencies and eliminate any duplication, but yet keep a highly motivated volunteer force. And Mayor, I know you mentioned that repeatedly in the Blue Ribbon panel, is how do we keep our volunteers motivated? How do we keep them active? How do we keep them well-trained and well-equipped without necessarily duplicating efforts, and how we can be most efficient in doing that? And in this day and age of the 2% levy cap and the challenges that come with fundraising and all the other costs that are coming onto the township that we have no control of whatsoever, and the unfunded mandates, this is why this discussion becomes so critical. And with that said, I think that already the Blue Ribbon Commission is showing some fruits of your labor in the fact that we have this number of volunteers that have come tonight. We've already heard from the three companies that they are moving in the areas of looking for efficiencies and eliminating duplication and trying to get the best value out of every dollar that either they raise through fundraising or is contributed by the municipality. So I'm quite pleased that we didn't have to force that out of anybody, that they looked at the report and they saw that the handwriting was on the walls, that you as a group, and I challenge everybody in all three companies, you have to come up with the solutions. Don't leave it up to us five to try to understand what you do on a daily basis and try to come up with the right answers. We need it to come from you. And you have the opportunity to actually form what could possibly be a really good example for other municipalities and how you integrate the vital rescue and fire services in a volunteer organization. So, and I'm glad to see that maybe some of these lingering cultural differences might finally be being put aside, because that's going to be the key. If we're not willing to work together and have those discussions and be candid, we're not going to get to the point where we have to be.
Yeah, as I read through the report, any question that I developed usually was answered later on, which was great.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Thank
data,
you.
and it's a lot of,
Yeah.
yes, it's chapter by chapter. I had a terrible time organizing the thoughts to
Yeah,
try
no,
to
it was
pull them
good,
together.
Very
but-
good. But there's one on page 11, and I don't think you can answer this, so I'm just going to raise the question, is that comments on the data, inspection of the record shows that 29 fire and 29 rescue spend a substantial effort responding to incidents on the interstate highway system. We're a small town, but we have 2 major interstate highways
That's
that
correct.
cross here. And it just seems inequitable to me that any town that has this problem should have to spend their own small municipal resources for truck traffic and interstate traffic. Is there any recourse? Is there any federal funds, grants that would help us pay for this?
As mayor, I could find nothing.
No,
That,
huh?
We went to the DOT, I know Mayor Cross, this was a real bug in his bonnet, and he tried to get legislation sponsored, and he did get some sponsors, and there was legislation put in before for the state to reimburse local volunteer companies for incidents on interstate
Yeah.
highways that pass through their town, and it got nowhere. It got nowhere. Now, as I mentioned in the thing on revenue, though, that is a billable opportunity to the insurance company. And,
Definitely.
I mean, this is part of how you can do it. And there are a lot of towns that do that, if they respond on the highway, you can establish an ordinance allowing the fire department to do billing against their insurance company. And again, it would be a soft billing procedure where, the deductibles and stuff don't get charged back to the motor vehicle, to the owner, but
Right.
But you take some of these things, they tie our guys up for hours and hours, and a lot of,
yeah.
I mean, just the
Yeah.
material they have to use.
Oh,
And
definitely.
expended, the diesel fuel, the wear and tear on
Yeah,
the
it
machines,
doesn't seem
the
equitable.
clean up of the oil and fire
that's state
extinguishers and all,
police.
it's all unreimbursed, and it's really above and beyond protecting our residents. Now, I mean, I've always driven on the theory that if I'm in some other town, they're gonna come and get me, and I hope that that's really true, but we do have a concentration here that most towns do not have. And as a
Yeah.
percentage of calls, it's high.
So there's state police, but there's no state fire, there's no state EMS. That does seem odd. Is there any reason that we don't bill Medicare, Medicaid, insurance companies, they'll pay, why don't we bill them? Is
Well,
there a reason?
Somerset does. When Somerset does daytime runs for,
Yeah, but
we
we
have-
don't.
they do, we do not.
Why don't
And-
we?
Well, my recommendation is that we do.
Yeah, but I mean, is there a reason why we haven't all these years? It seems like, why not, if they'll
Well,
pay?
it's up to the squad and the fire company to instigate that and establish a billing procedure, and then, it's a two-way street. And I raised it years ago and with previous presidents of the rescue squad, and it was, we're volunteer, I mean, the story you always get
Yeah.
is, and I understand, we're volunteers, we're not gonna get paid for what we do.
No, they
And
wouldn't get
it's
paid,
not.
but they.
No, they don't
use
get
it-
paid.
But they would
All they're
use it
doing is
for
they're
their-
getting reimbursement to help pay their overhead.
Right,
As Patty said, they own their own building, they own their property, they own all their rigs, they gotta take care of that stuff, they gotta pay upkeep, they gotta
right,
put
right.
roofs on the building, they gotta do all this stuff. Although one disadvantage of the building that they do own, and it's mentioned in the report, is that that is on the Somerset County hazard,
right, the
issue,
flood,
lo-
yeah, it was
because of the
mentioned in
location.
Floodplain.
and there's $500,000 to $1.5 million in play there as to what to do with that building. I mean, that's an issue going forward and going back, that, because, I mean, you could lose all your rescue equipment in one flash flood.
It's insured, I assume.
Well, yeah, but you need it during the flood. I mean, it can get isolated. When that river rises, the Far Hills can be isolated. And I know during the races, during the steeplechase, we would sit down and make sure we had stuff deployed around so that, as these roads got blocked, we were still able to find ways and have equipment moved about. So, I mean, it's a concern. It's a bad spot.
Thank you. Well, maybe I should ask Ms. Siegel, or if someone else wants to answer the question as to why you haven't billed and used that money for your equipment,
Well, they've had,
Well, I'm gonna
I can
ask
answer the
Ms.
question
Siegel.
most likely. If you take a look, For 29.
Patty was walking up to the mic. If
Yeah.
he wants to, go ahead. That's,
Their fundraising is so effective that they cover 95% of their costs. If you take a look at the data, a call for the fire department only cost a tax unit $9 a year.
Right.
A fire call by 29 Fire cost the tax units $95.
Right, so they could use that money to
But-
offset.
Well, see, the issue that I have is that, the merger allows that money generated to be used by all the emergency services.
Mhm.
All right, and if they were operating as a single corporation, which is, you could have divisions of a corporation. If they operated as a single corporation and all that money flowed into a single pot, that just the soft billing for the rescue squad and the issues for the fire department would cover approximately 50% of the total cost of operating the departments. So, this is a significant issue. It would generate more money than the money they would generate with soft billing would exceed their budget by $100,000 or $150,000. So what
Yeah.
would they do with that extra money?
Even if they don't merge, though, they could still bill and use the money for any of the costs that they now have,
Well,
even
yeah,
though
like,
EMS
I
doesn't
think it
seem
takes
to have
an
costs.
ordinance to authorize it, but, yeah, that this still could be done.
Does anyone there, Ms. Siegel, anyone have an answer as to why you haven't billed or you don't want to bill?
Historically, we have not billed, but really what I'd like to do is come back to you with a more complete answer, because part of what we're looking into is billing practices, and there's a lot that's involved with what you actually can bill, what you can't, services that you wouldn't be able to bill for. So it sounds like a simple question, but it really is a more complicated answer to give you. So I'd rather just hold off on the answer till we can really give you the proper answer.
Anybody from the fire companies have a reason why they wouldn't want to bill the insurance companies if other towns do it? Okay, you can,
I'm not aware of any,
okay.
I'm not aware of any towns that bill fire service to a resident. There are towns that bill for accident response.
Right.
So the question is two-parted. And there are local municipalities that do bill for highway responses, but again, it's through a municipal ordinance. So it's a little bit of what comes first, the cart or the horse.
Would you have a problem if we did, or you want to think about that and come back and make a request for an ordinance? But would you have a problem if we did?
I think what's going to come out of this is we're going to go back into our focus sessions and chat this up. I'm looking forward to their responses that I'll use to update the report. And we'll have talks as time goes by to try to firm up a plan.
And maybe we could do something about finding out if, well, the state hasn't been giving us money, they've been taking our money away from us lately. But
Don't expect change.
if we could have possible legislation that for the state or even the federal government to somehow reimburse us for responses at two interstate highways, that would of course affect every town.
But if we set a billing thing for automobile accidents, for instance, that would handle the highway burden.
Right.
Or reduce the highway economic burden.
Yeah, and again, I wanted to thank everyone here. It's easy enough to volunteer to sit in a chair and go to a meeting, but you volunteer in a way that sometimes puts your lives on the line, and certainly you put a lot more on the line than everybody else in town does when we volunteer. So thank you very much. I know everybody does very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Mayor Haltway, what would you identify as the low-hanging fruit, something that could be done quickly within the next year or two that you've identified in the report?
Well, obviously, the cross-training, the issues of DPW guys being able to roll any engine in town with the proper cross-training. It's complicated. There's equipment, there's things, and guys have to get things. That obviously is something that could happen quickly, and I think that
on the cross-training and
jumped on.
equipment, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's my understanding that not all the equipment between the
yeah, that's a problem.
between the units
It's
is
consistent.
compatible.
That's correct.
So in the short term, if there was a move to make the equipment compatible, which therefore would make the training compatible. Is that a big expense? Is that a small expense?
But I think it's, one of the big inconsistencies now is their air packs, and they each have a different manufacturer of air packs. Every time you get a new firefighter, he has to be custom fit with a part, and so it's an iterative process. As guys retire and their equipment goes away and new comes in, that they'll be replaced in a consistent manner, and one style be phased out. You could probably get better buys on larger quantities and that kind of thing. The training is probably, and we really have to get down to the nitty-gritty and find out why the training hours are so different. We did not investigate why it was different. All we did was catch the flag that one was 250 and one was 500. And Mayor Lloyd's comment was that, wow, 500, that's 13 weeks or whatever. And that's something that needs to be looked at. But it's the joint training. They both have training officers. They both have to go through procedures. So you've got a bunch of guys here doing a thing and then the guys here doing a thing. Well, if these guys sponsored one training function and everybody went there, and then these guys offered the other training function and everybody went there, I think you would find that the number of training hours and the effort and the cost of organizing and the ability to provide that training would be greatly reduced, which would be a reduction in burden very quickly. Those are the three items that, as low-hanging fruit,
Is there
come to quickly
is there a
to mind.
reason that the equipment is inconsistent? Is it just historical? Is there a preference for one equipment over the other?
I don't know what kind of car you drive, but your neighbor probably drives a different model automobile. And he likes something about it, and you like something, and you made a choice, an independent choice. And, do both do the same job? Virtually. I mean, there are differences. And I'm not a fireman. I've had the stuff put on my back and in my face when I was in office. But, it's one of those things that they both looked at the market and they both picked different things. Why, I don't know. But it's like a Ford and a Chevy and a...
Some of that is due to
David.
this bid process. If you, I'm sorry.
Mr. Dave, no, hit the microphone so we record this.
Yeah. Ernie Davis, Pottersville Fire. I've been a resident of Bedminster Township for 40 years. Some of the equipment, if you go to European countries, it's you can go from one firehouse to the next firehouse to the next firehouse, and that piece of apparatus that is there, and there are the same. So you train on this one, you can operate this one. Over here, you've got, I don't know how many different manufacturers of equipment. And when we go out for equipment, you come up with a generic spec, but you put it out to a bid process. And if you take the lower bidder, you won't always get the same apparatus maker. And each apparatus maker has their own unique features and so on and so forth and what have you. How they locate the pump, how they arrange the pump panel, how they do this. It's basically a pump, yeah, and you can learn it. But that is one reason that you have the incompatibility, I think, is what you're talking about. And you're always going to have that until, and it's not us, until somehow somebody up on above says, hey, let's standardize fire equipment to a degree.
Does that go for the air pack as well?
Air packs are different. The reason was there was an issue, it was with Scott and MSA. We looked at both when we got them. We funded our own air packs. The reason, we had Scott before, and we recall. No, we were thinking MSA. Chester Volunteer Fire Company had MSAs. They had them for a year, and they turned them back in because there was a number of recalls on them. At that time, we were purchasing them. So at that time, we said, well, we don't want to go that route. We'll stick with the Scott. That's okay. The mask is different, but bottles can be interchanged because it's a universal connection. They did standardize on that.
So if we were if there was a recommendation, and once again, these are recommendations.
Right.
Right, so you guys are independent, we control some budget line items, but you are 3 independent organizations. If there were to be a cost savings in having consistency through PPE or through other equipment, radio or other communication devices, how would that happen? Is it a matter of 29 and 63 and 29 rescue work, putting it together? Is it selecting one model? Is someone's group using a better equipment or cheaper equipment?
Well, firefighting gear, turnout gear compared to rescue turnout gear, I think they're different animals. Your firefighting gear is for structural firefighting. Your rescue gear, I mean, it's compliant to a different standard than firefighting gear. So if you would buy probably firefighting gear for a rescue squad, it would be too bulky and cumbersome for them they need a lighter weight gear, but it has to be resistant to bloodborne pathogens and so on and so forth. It's hard to say. Like you say, could we all standardize? Oh yeah, but it's not going to happen tomorrow, because now you're going to say, okay, you throw away your gear, you throw away your gear. To give you an idea, when we bought our air packs, there were 10 air packs. We paid for them. With bottles, it cost us over $80,000. That's just for 10 packs. Turnout gear typically, and this is with state contract, by state contract, different manufacturers supply bids to the state, and they try to set the lowest price. Can you get them lower than state contract? Sometimes yes, but typically some of these suppliers will stick to, whether you buy 1 or you buy 10, it's a state contract price. So I don't know.
So it makes me wonder that, if we were to, if that is low-hanging fruit, and if there was a way to get consistent equipment to where it's appropriate, it almost seems to me that phasing it in kind of doesn't make sense, because to some extent you're going to have part of 29 or whoever's going to change. It makes me wonder, do you do that at one fell swoop, which is a budgetary expense, or do you phase it in and run the risk of having folks on the same unit on different equipment?
Well, once an air pack is assigned to somebody, that's their unit. Nobody else will ever use it. And face masks and everything are all custom made and everything else.
Just the face mask, not the pack.
Yeah.
Everyone should have their own mask. The pack, I mean, whether you have 10 people each have their own mask, they can pick as long as if it's an MSA in the case of Far Hills, any one of their members can pick one of their MSAs. They don't have to have a particular pack assigned to them.
But
it's just a mask.
But when you compare the two of them, as time goes by, all your new members get whatever the standard is. And yes, you're going to have them using one and them using the other, but as time goes by, the odd ones will disappear. And the same thing goes for oxygen meters and fire extinguishers and things. I mean, the issue is the cross-training, so that anybody can use anybody's equipment. That's where you have to get that in the event that we have a disaster and somebody is up short and the equipment isn't being utilized, that the other fire company can utilize that equipment, either it's because they can't raise people during the day, if they have to respond, if something is short, they need a pump operator here. Anybody in Bedminster should be able to operate any piece of equipment. That's a goal. It's a long-term goal.
Is that a goal that 63 shares?
I actually mentioned that if we were at the commission that we should be doing it. That's true.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Bernie Davis, Assistant Chief of Pottersville. I actually suggested to Mr. Holt the way that anytime there's a major incident in Bedminster, both fire companies should be able to use either or equipment. Obviously, Far Hills has a really specialized piece in their aerial, which we're not accustomed to. But you got a pump school, a pump's a pump. The handles might be different. It's the same mechanisms inside, although we have a calf truck, which is a specialized unit. So there would be some special training on that. But driving the truck is basically the same. I mean, you can argue about it, but we're all here to protect everybody. So we should all just get together and work on everything.
Thank you, Bernie.
Well, I will,
I
oh,
have-
go
I
ahead.
just-
You
I just have a comment and a
No, no,
question
please.
for Mayor
Please,
Holdway.
go ahead.
My comment is to all our volunteers, really. Your commitment is really clear to all of us up here. When we work with you during the week and during the events, your commitment is really clear to us then, so we thank you very much. My question, though, Mayor Holdway, when you were doing your research for the report, did you have the opportunity to find any other communities that are going through, I'm sure they are, the same problems that we are, looking for the same solutions? Were we able to find, I know our community is very unique, but were you able to find anyone who have maybe some answers or who are going through same pains that we are to find efficiencies?
There are a lot of towns with multiple companies. And Tewksbury, as I mentioned earlier, is served by 5 companies. And that's a real management problem for them. And as a matter of fact, I forget how many, 2 or 3 of them are not even within their municipality that they support. So they're anxious to find a solution. They're anxious to see how we do, obviously. You know, the way these things are structured, some towns have fire districts where they just tax the hell out of everybody and they have all the money they need. Other towns are struggling. They don't have enough money to give the fire department enough, and they're running with obsolete equipment. So, you know, looking at other towns, and I can't say we did find anybody that was in a similar position to us that I would say, oh yeah, look how they solved it. I did not see that.
Okay. And in your report, you did mention something with regard to Tewksbury's financial assistance to us, and that might be something we can look at more quickly.
Yeah, well, the numbers changing a little bit. We'll make some corrections and get those charts revised when we issue the final report. But yeah, that there's a substantial difference in the cost per tax unit and the cost per call between the 2 towns.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you
When
very
we
much.
started out,
Oh, I thought you were done.
No, that's all right. Well, you know, when we started out this process, I asked the Blue Ribbon Commission for 3 goals: to make sure we protected the residents through the best readiness that we could provide. We did need to value our volunteers because without them we don't have any protection. So we needed to foster our volunteerism, but we also know the financial constraints that every municipality in the state of New Jersey is experiencing these days. I've had personal experience because in the past 7 or 8 years I've had, well, I'll say the experience of being in a 29 rescue ambulance taken to Somerset Medical Center. I've had a brush fire threaten my house that was put out with a 2-alarm fire. So I do know how important and valuable all you folks are out there that volunteer. And I hope nobody, and I'm sure it's crossing people's mind, that why are we here? Why are we being taken to the woodshed? We're volunteers. We're here to help. And you're not. But I will tell you, as you drive around the state of New Jersey, we're fortunate. But if you drive around a lot of places in New Jersey, not too far from this building, if you go past a fire or rescue squad building, you'll see a sign, and it says, members needed, members badly needed, members very badly needed. It's a tough dilemma that we have in this state, fostering volunteers and funding them. My experience, I've never been a firefighter, never been a member of a rescue squad. I did spend 20 years in the military. I was in an organization where I flew airplanes on a base that had 3 squadrons that did the exact same thing. 3 different squadrons all flew the same airplanes. We had the same training, we had the same qualifications, and we were parallel organizations. It was a little easier in the military because somebody with a lot of stars on his shoulder said, "Thou shalt standardize," and we standardized. But I also know that there's institutional rivalry, which is great. I want 63 to think that they're a hell of a lot better than 29. I want 29 to think that they're a hell of a lot better than 63. That's great. That's competition. That keeps our volunteers sharp and strong. But by the same token, there's the other side of that, where I remember I was I was out at McCord Air Force Base, and through attrition, in 5 years, I was in all 3 flying squadrons there. And every one of them thought they were the best. But the other side of that is each squadron thought that the other 2 squadrons were a bunch of idiots. Just human nature. I'm not suggesting that's happening here. But we did learn, and we were forced to go to training together. Didn't mean you did all your training together, but you know what? If you couldn't get your landings for the month with your squadron, guess what? You hitched a ride on the other squadron's trainer Thursday night. And guess what? They did things the same way. And the good news is, since they did things the same way, when you came back to your job, you were just as trained whether you're on another squadron's airplane or our airplane. And that's one of the things that, and I know that 63 mentioned it tonight, and I know 29 has mentioned it, and geez, I hope as this fleshes out that spirit moves forward. One of the other things that kind of jumped out at me as I read this report that makes it very difficult is 63 and 29, and I'm going to just speak on fire. They're different, and it is their coverage areas. One of the reasons I asked for the coverage area maps, and I'll need the coverage area map for all of 63, is it's apples and it's oranges, and it's very tough to compare. I go back to my military analogy, and we spent 30 years in the Cold War with bombers and missiles and submarines on alert. Fortunately, they never did their job. Fire and rescue, we kind of hope you guys are the same way. We hope that we have nice polished fire trucks in the building that never have to roll. Therefore, when you start comparing costs per roll, costs per response, that can be very tough. If you've got a unit that has, we would hope that none of you guys ever roll. We never have a fire and we never have an accident. But one coverage area is huge with a lot more calls, and one coverage area is very small with a lot less calls. It's hard to equate those. One thing that we did kind of grasp at, and which seems to be a disparity, is the training, because that theoretically you should both be as prepared as the other. So I think we will have to get unpeel the onion a little bit more to figure out what is that. We know there's certain fixed costs, but there's variable costs too, and that may be something that we have to unpeel a little bit. But I just want to convey that I do understand in reading this report that that you are not all equal in your coverage area, in your your units, but we do owe it to you guys and gals and the taxpayers to be as efficient as we possibly can. And we spent a lot of time on this tonight. It's not over, but I would like to propose that the way we go forward, and it's been mentioned a couple times, is we go forward by sitting down with the leadership or subcommittees from the 3 units and sit down and talk about, again, you give us your solution, because you guys and gals are the ones who do the job every day. I'd like to propose a subcommittee of myself and Ms. Santucci to kind of be the ones that work with you all. And then hopefully as we get into the new year, very soon into the new year, I'm hoping, that we can at least get a way forward. May not be the complete answer, but it might be a roadmap to moving forward. And I'd like to ask the other members of the panel if they've got any comments or questions about that.
Just in reading the report, and I think we've made the first initial steps tonight with the presentations we've seen in the comments, is that's the direction we're going in. And we need some real life, we need some imagination, and we need some real life ideas and solutions, and to kick them around. But it can't be unilateral. It's certainly not going to come from this side of the dais, and it can't come from only one company. It's got to come from all 3 units.
Anybody else?
I just want to say, if we're asking the volunteers to come up with a solution, have we really delineated what the problems and the issues are as a committee? I mean, what do we think the problems and the issues are?
Well,
Are we going to
you know,
go with what's in the report?
One of the things we have in the report is that we think that, and I believe, that they should be left to their devices. They understand the problem. I think this rang a bell. And there's 2 comments I want to make. One is that I'm very, very pleased with the response of all 3 departments. when we sat down at our first focus group, we spoke about cooperation, they pledged cooperation, and based on what we've heard tonight from all of them, they're going the right direction. This met the goal that Lance and I had, that they would start to talk and they would take this seriously. And I think in that respect, we have been successful. And so I would think that the last thing that they need is interaction or supervision from the Township Committee.
Yeah, I don't mean that. What I mean is we're asking for solutions, specifically solutions to who has defined what the problem
Oh,
is.
they're in the report.
Okay.
Why are the difference in the training hours? Why are there
are
4
we in
times as many
agreement?
calls per tax unit in Pottersville
Right.
as there are? Why are there 258 false alarms?
You're an
Why are
advisory
there-
committee to us. Do we adopt all of those as the problem that we want answers to? That's what I think we need to decide.
Well, I think when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, we looked at the recommendation and said we're going to take some of it, all of it, or none of it, or we may find some other things. And I think that's kind of the direction we're going.
Yeah, I think you need to let these folks,
Yeah.
after tonight's discussion, we make the corrections, I redistribute the report with their corrections and comments. Then when your subcommittee sits down with them, they go through the list, some of these things may disappear in the numbers. I mean, these are numbers taken out of spreadsheets and off reports. And there's a lot of splaining to do to explain why this falls out like it does. And I would let all that process happen and this be revised before you start worrying about setting new goals. Let's get what the real issue is. Let's get all the corrections made and everybody's input, and maybe it'll solve itself. Maybe we'll turn around when that process is done and say, okay, great, we're going forward.
Carolyn, I think to your comment, I think Mr. Boxer identified that, and so did Mayor Holtaway at the first presentation, which is the sustainability of the budgetary issues. Is that we are funding 3 different units, and this was mentioned by Bernie Davis before, which is on, at least I think it was Bernie, talking about the procurement requests, whether they're phased in at the same time. If both 29 and 63 come in asking for monies towards $500,000
Right.
purchases, you know, long term, short term that's not sustainable, and long term it's certainly not sustainable. So the you know, perhaps the precipitating factor is looking at it from a budgetary issue, which is really our role in this. There's certainly a lot more opportunity for the organizations to polish up some of the issues along the fringes, but certainly from our end, it's really looking at it from a budgetary standpoint.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the only way.
I would add, too, I think it's a matter of defining the mission.
Yeah.
You know, mission accomplished, what is the mission? The mission
Yeah.
is not just to save money, but to
Right.
be able to provide
Need to
the
get response
residents
time,
with the best
primary light
trained,
response.
best equipped, most responsive for the money, fire and rescue services that you know, is reasonably obtainable. I think that's the mission.
Yeah, and keeping in mind that they are volunteers, that they have funded their own buildings and their own equipment, do a lot of work for us, and, yeah, giving them a lot of respect, and as you said, a lot of say into what's going to
Yeah, I
happen.
mean, this is a problem that's
You know.
evolved over years, and they've been 3 independent silos out there operating in their own, and, you know, the times have changed, and now they have to reorder those silos or bump them together or put them on top of each other or something, and I think giving them the time to sort that out is the wise thing to do.
So moving forward, we're asking them to respond to this report.
Correct.
Are we in agreement that we want them, that all of the issues delineated in this report are the issues that we're concerned about?
Well,
That's
We may
what I'm
find
trying
out.
to-
You gotta.
No, I'm asking
Well,
us,
it-
because they are an advisory committee to us, and do we adopt this
Well,
report?
Carolyn, I'm hoping that
Well, I
through all
think
these
it shouldn't be
discussions and
adopted
research, you've
until it's revised with the data corrections.
I
and the
think it's
factual
premature
corrections.
to really ask that question is still
It's
premature.
still, it's premature to
I
adopt it.
I think the best outcome is, as you investigate this, that we come up with things that the Blue Ribbon Commission, the committee, and the companies didn't even think about originally. That's the best
There's
outcome.
stuff outside this box. This is a box that I've drawn and Lance have drawn together in cooperation with the companies. Is there stuff outside the box that we missed? Yeah, bring it in.
And Carolyn, perhaps the question is not that we adopt the report, but as Bernie mentioned, we define the mission.
Yeah, that's
right?
what
So-
I'm saying.
so
We
we-
need to define the mission, and we need to
Yeah,
figure
but wait
out
till the
what we're
report's
asking
done,
them
and
to
you'll
do.
have a better
And you
idea
have
of what
to-
the mission might be.
And you have
Well, maybe not done, maybe the next
Revised.
iteration
The
of
next
the
iteration,
report.
that's correct.
So the proposal that I'm floating out on the table right now is that we use a subcommittee of this body to sit down with subcommittees from either the leadership or whoever they choose, with the three entities, so that we can speak frankly in a more casual environment to try to troubleshoot and look through this report and see if we can get synergies out of that. I think that's the go forward that I'm proposing.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Makes sense, and to Carolyn's point, I think as the process continues, that mission itself will define itself.
Okay?
All right.
Tewksbury obviously has a piece in this, and Township Committeeman and former Mayor Sean Van Dorn was here listening to our discussion tonight, and I expect he's read the report. Thank you very much, everybody.
you.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hold on. We do have one other item of old business, and that is in reference to a discussion, an ongoing discussion we've had on videotaping of Township Committee meetings. I know when I was down at the League 2 weeks ago, I think Mr. Jacobs and I ran into some colleagues from Bernards Township, and that was something that they were looking at over in Bernards Township. I think part of the difficulty that we've had with these discussions has been that we're kind of talking about a concept as opposed to a program. Something tangible with a dollar value, something with parameters. And it will be something that will be certainly affected in our budget cycle, which is just around the corner.
Well, I think to do the videotaping with one camera, with either a tripod or with someone manning it, is minimal expense. And I know Bernards Township does videotape every meeting, and that, not only that, you go on the website, you can see it live, or you can go on the website and you can get a videotape of a past meeting. But PPAC Gladstone does, I think they do audio on their website, and they're looking into video. I talked again to Sandy Green over at Bernardsville, and she said that Councilman Rossi was the one who wanted to do the more expensive one with several cameras, but that he's tabled that now because they decided they don't have the money for that, so they're back to just looking at videotaping with one camera as an option. But she said right now they're not discussing it.
They're not discussing
Well,
the
they're not,
multi-camera or
they're,
the single camera?
they're not, she said they're not ready with a recommendation because I think most of them want to do just one camera like I am proposing, and Councilman Rossi wants what she calls the Cadillac version. But they've decided they don't have the money for the Cadillac version, so they've got to decide whether they're going to do the one camera inexpensive version or nothing. But they're definitely, they have the audio on their website of you know, all the back meetings. So at a minimum, we should put the audio on. But she said the problem with the audio, the reason they want to do video is that the mayor doesn't always recognize who's speaking, and then there's overlapping speaking, then people butt in. Gee, I never do that. You know, people butt in, and nobody knows who's talking. I know when I listen to it, I can kind of figure it out because I know our voices, but if someone from the public gets the CD of the meeting, they have no idea who's saying what. And that's hard, you know. It's really hard because you can't go to the minutes and figure it out, because the minutes are not a transcript at all. So, you know, I know Basil Skapertis was here videotaping most of the meeting, right? And he can get up and speak, and we could put that on, I don't know, what website were you going to put that on? One that you create, and we could see what that looks like. Huh? Yeah, if you want. Is that okay? Because I don't know what website it's going on.
All right, Basil Skapertis, 19 Steeplechase Court. I recorded about an hour and a half tonight, but I ran out of battery. What I plan to do is get the audio from the Township Committee and just splice it onto the end of the video and just have the rest of it run dark with the audio. At least the whole Township Committee meeting will be online. What it simply will be is to go to the Bedminster Democratic Party website, which is bedminsterdemocrats.com, and there'll be a link to a YouTube video on that site of tonight's meeting. I should have it done in about 48 hours.
I guess we can look at that and see what we think of that, you know, and as you say, the cost of doing that is minimal. It's a $300 camera. It's either a volunteer or a staff person holding the camera, or we could try it on another time, we could try it on a tripod without moving the camera, see how that works. And as I said, we get over 3 years, we get $30,000 from Cablevision to be used for telecommunications or some sort of technical equipment. I'm sure we could use that money for the $300, or if we have to pay a staff member to come to 2 meetings a month. I'm not proposing that Judy do it. She does more than enough already.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's, I will make the suggestion that just like we did with our last item, perhaps we have a subcommittee on this, so that we're not just talking about a concept, but we can talk about an actual, this is what we want, like Berners Township did, and you seem to be the most studied up on this, and perhaps Mr. Jacobs can come up with a subcommittee. Budget, the budget cycle's right around the corner. We're going to figure out if we have money for this or we don't have money for this, and what it is. The abstract concept, we can probably spend a lot of meetings just going around and around in circles. But if we have an actual, hey, this is our proposal, like we did with the phone systems, we can take that from there.
Yeah, and I think, Mayor, part of the discussion also has to be is just not the cost and the manpower and the technology that's available, but from a policy standpoint. I did have some conversations with committee people in other communities, even outside of this, of Somerset County, who do tape. They brought up some legitimate concerns that they've encountered over the years, or whatever in the period of time that they have been videotaping, and I think that has to be part of the discussion. There are pros and cons to videotaping in today's age, where let's just say that the consensus was from these people I spoke to that there is the real danger that the tape can be exploited for a number of different reasons, and we have to be very careful about what kind of genie we let out of the bottle.
Well, I am of the opinion, let's figure out what the genie is.
Right.
And get a proposal, and we can use that proposal, and then we can figure out, is it worth it, is it not worth it? But right now, we've been stalled in about 4 or 5 meetings in a row where we just talk concept without anything concrete, and I feel we're kind of just going in circles.
Yeah, and we can go on that website, if you don't mind going on the Democrats' website and seeing what this looks like. Yeah, I mean, we should definitely do that. That's why I think Basil's doing it, so that we can see what it looks like.
And I guess a question for John. The Bernards, are they inventoried? Are they archived so that we can go back and look at what Bernards is doing?
I'm not involved, obviously, in the particular details. I do know they have an IT person. I can't say that, I go to the meeting, I don't then go back and watch the meeting. I was there.
So much fun the first time.
Make sure you don't wear the same suit twice in a row.
Right. They just have a stationary camera. I do think they have a live remote operator, the IT person, because I know when they go into executive session, then he will cut away from that. But I don't know the particular details about how they operate.
Okay,
system and store things.
but since there's a process, perhaps that's something that Carolyn, you and I and Judy can talk to Bruce over at Bernard's and. and
I think any of us could.
Probably more the clerk you would want to
I
speak
talked to Denise Zabo about it at the New Jersey League, and I went to her presentation, and she did say there was one person there at the meetings manning the camera. And
Oh, he's not actually at the meetings.
Oh,
He's
really?
not physically at the meetings. It's done remotely. He doesn't actually go to the
So
meetings.
you don't even have to have a paper person?
It's,
Well, anyway,
it's just a
let's,
stationary
we can
camera.
do this
okay.
investigation offline and figure out, get all the particulars. But if I can get a sense of the committee, I think that's kind of a way forward, so we can at least focus on this and
Yeah.
make a decision a little more intelligently. All right? That
Okay.
gets us out of our old business and to public comments. Our second bite at the apple. Please come to the microphone, identify yourself, because we are recording this, even audio.
Brian Haggerty, Fairview Drive, Bedminster. I'm speaking as a private citizen, not as a member of any political body. I have a few things to address. I want to re-echo as a community member. I've been in an ambulance, my son's been in an ambulance, and thank God we haven't had a fire yet, but glad you guys were all there, and thank you. As far as the recording of meetings, I believe that public comments is the most important part of the meeting. All of the brave volunteers you heard from this evening could not have addressed you if they were watching this later on videotape. I think we need to keep a focus on that.
What did you say? They could not have?
They could not have addressed this meeting if they'd been home tomorrow watching this on videotape. So it's a concept. I know we're going to talk about particulars with details, but I'm still on the concept. So I believe that public comments is the most important part of the meeting. All the brave volunteers who addressed you tonight would not have been able to address you tonight if they had waited till tomorrow to watch it on the video.
Oh, it's
That's my
public.
point.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I thought this was public comments. Is this committee
I
dialogue?
want to clarify what you're saying, or
Okay.
I didn't understand what you were saying.
Okay, well, I'll make it more clear. I wholeheartedly oppose the government taping people while they're making public comments. If a member of the public is here taping, or if we've fallen into audio taping the meetings, so be it. But it's a little intimidating standing at this microphone. I stand before you at least once a month and make general routine announcements and make comments. I'm disagreeing with at least two of you because, Mayor, I don't think it's time to move on to the particulars. I think there is a conceptual problem with this. And Ms. Freeman, I don't know why this is such a big deal, but you and I disagree about a lot of things. And it's a little intimidating to stand here. And if it was a video, it'd be a little more intimidating. But at least if a member of the opposition party was taping you and happened to get me, it would be less intimidating than if you were taping me with your attorney and your police chief and so forth. I trust you folks, but I don't know what government I'm going to have in 15 years. I was just a guest over the weekend at the home of people who used to live in Russia under the Soviet system. I don't like the government getting in my life. Anyway, that's what I have to say about taping. Do I still have time left in my 3 minutes? This is not speaking as a Board of Ed member, but I happen to know this from the Board of Ed. The 3.5 children comes about when couples are separated, have joint custody, and live in two different school districts, and the child is an outplacement. The cost can be assigned to two different districts.
Thank you.
Also, I was in attendance at the school board meeting. Actually, I was on the board, but I would like to say that we also spoke about the audit was accepted, and there was very little corrective action on that.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And I still would like to know, it's been mentioned in this body by one member, and it's been mentioned by someone in this room, and it came up in another context. I keep hearing about double taxation in the hills. Perhaps I heard a little bit about that from the Blue Ribbon Commission report of the cost between the fire companies, but I'm still waiting for an answer at what double taxation of the hills is, because the services that you pay for, and I used to be a Hills resident, the services I paid for in my association, I pretty much just buy those individually now. I think other than snow plowing and street paving, and I do have to pay and plow my own driveway, which is essentially how I looked at my association, which was a private road. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Please come up and be recognized.
I don't know who, I think it's the police
Oh,
department.
name again, please? We know who
Mary
you are
Jane
looking at you,
Fennell.
but he's out of tape or out of battery, so.
Good. Tomorrow night, in this building, there's going to be a safety course by one of the police officers to show us how to protect ourselves during this busy shopping season. And I wouldn't have known about that unless I saw it in the Bernardsville News. So I think we need a little bit more publicity of what's going on in the town, other than the Township Committee meetings and the Board of Ed meetings. I signed up for that class this morning, and with what's going on out there, everybody should sign up. I mean, there's a lot of things happening that I never heard of before. So tomorrow night, 7 o'clock here with one of the police officers.
Thank you, Mrs. Fennell of Hillside Avenue for the perpetuity of the tape. Anyone else? Okay, let's go around to Township Committee comments. Mr. Payne.
Nothing further, Mayor.
Ms. Freeman.
I forgot to mention at the League of Municipalities, I had dinner with Senator Bob Smith, who sponsors State Senator much of the environmental legislation, and we did talk about a lot of issues, and it was a really interesting meeting. And I think one avenue we could look at for some of the problems we have is to ask a state senator or state representative to initiate legislation, especially what we were talking about here with the federal government perhaps kicking in some money, or the state government, for the accidents on interstate highways and not the municipalities, but that's just another issue. And to respond to one of Mr. Haggerty's issues is the state Supreme Court has said that the public has a right to videotape any meeting, any public meeting. So you really, I mean,
I'm out of order, but I'll say,
they have
I don't
spoken.
have an issue with the public recording meetings. I told you, I welcome that.
Videotape.
Don't put words in my mouth.
No, I'm telling you the
I have a
answer.
problem with the government recording us, not with us recording you. Don't put words in my mouth. And
No,
since I was out of order, you can throw me out of the meeting.
I'm quoting the state Supreme Court case that any member of the
You
public,
call that one of my issues. It's not.
anyway, any member of the public can videotape any public meeting. That's just
Okay.
law. Sorry. And the double taxation issue, I will get back to you. Thank you.
Mr. Jacobs.
No further comments.
Ms. Santucci.
Just to follow up with what Mrs. Fennell said, this Friday is a Colonial Christmas Gala for Jacobus Vanderveer House. So just to talk about some things that are happening in our community. And again, thank you to the volunteers. Thank you for the members who are participating. We're really looking forward to working with you.
And where's that located?
At Trump.
There you go. All right. I have no further comment for the evening. Ms. Sullivan, do we have an executive session?
Yes, we do, sir.
Okay, I'm looking on the wrong sheet. So we're going into executive session. There will be nothing coming out of that executive session of substance. In other words, there'll be no decisions made out of that. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.